She's talking to you.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Full Circle with Tessa Dooms. We're starting a little bit late this morning, but we're going to push on and deliver a show that's going to be provocative, and hopefully that will get us thinking about, again, South Africa and South African life in different ways. This morning, we're going to be covering a topic that's very close to my heart, and I know is close to the hearts of many people who enjoy the arts and who have a special relationship to arts, culture, to dance, to poetry, and to song. We're going to be talking about the role of the arts in politics and how artists in this country can become part of a process of changing this country for the better, making South Africa the kind of place we want to be, casting the kind of vision and creating the kind of reflection of society that helps us move forward. And so this morning I'm really excited for the guests that I have. I have with me two activists who are artists in the space. There are also people who have managed and brought together artists in different spaces, but all for the same goal of achieving a better South Africa, different kind of country. So Esther and Mxolisi, thank you so much for joining me. They are from the IKO organization, and they'll be with me for the next 45 minutes or so as we chat all things arts and politics. So I'm going to start with you guys just introducing yourselves, telling us a little bit about who you are, what you do, and why you do it. So Esther, you want to kick us off?
Yeah, no, definitely. Good morning, Tessa, and good morning to the viewers. My name is Zed, it's Esther Padi. I'm the chairperson of Innovating Kasi organization. Innovating Kasi organization's core mandate is to help turn artistic skills into a career. Because we have realized there's a huge gap that artists are just artists. Art is just a hobby. So we're trying to break that narrative and teach our people that art is more of a career and it is indeed creating or contributing a whole lot into the GDP of our country. So that's how we are advocating for artists to be recognized as workers and to even get to a point where they can be able to be treated fairly in terms of labor related laws so that they can be able to sustain themselves as well as workers. So that's what we do in a nutshell.
All right. Mxolisi, who are you? But also tell us a little bit about how the IKO journey started. It's a very interesting story. So I'd like you to share that.
Okay, good morning to everyone. Good morning, Ms. Dooms. Lovely studios we have here. Well, my name is Mxolisi Phiri. IKO was formed back in 2012, late 2012. Actually, next month we are turning 10 years because it was 12th of October, I think, when we formed IKO, formally that is. How it was formed, really, it was formed out of being frustrated because we started with registering a company, hoping that we will run our own record company. And we had a lot of people that were talented, a lot of them, right? Some have made it, people like TS, people like Gigi Lamin and stuff. We had a lot of artists, but then we could not really penetrate the market at that time because there's so many red tapes in the industry, there's so much politics in the industry that we were not aware of. You know, we thought talent was just enough. If you have talent, you can just go in. And we've realized that there's so many talent at the same time on the ground, you know, people are not getting opportunities. So we decided to say, you know what, we need to gather information and gather workshops and push for us to have, for people to have information, because we realized that we were not the only ones that are frustrated by the system or the situation that how arts operate, right? So I'm talking about particularly musicians and the film industry actors, right? So we started hosting workshops, music dinner sessions where we'll call in legends and giants in the industry, people that understand, so that they can share their wisdom on how we go about that. So that's how basically IKO was mainly formed. Hence, that is why our mandate is to turn artistic skills into career, is to enhance small businesses. Because we believe that if one artist makes it, that person is able to hire one person to a number of people. You know, I mean, I'm talking from professionals. If you are a well-established artist, you have lawyers, accountants, down to people that maybe jobs that we take for granted, like domestic workers and helpers and all those people. So that's empowerment, right? That's a whole lot of empowerment. Also, again, we were provoked by the fact that as Africans, or as South Africans mainly, we always idolize other countries, and arts plays a very important role when it comes to the image of the country and how people should position themselves. So if we idolize Americans and our artists sound like Americans, we become fake Americans. So we felt it was also important to say, keep it real, be you, you know, come from that point of view, so that we become authentic of who we are, and we take pride in who we are. So yeah, that's who we are, IKO.
So before we get into a bit more specific things around things you guys do, that point that you made now about heritage is part of the reason why I wanted to have this conversation now during Heritage Month. Okay. Because I think we've lost that link between arts and culture and heritage. I think it's in part due to a politics that doesn't really recognize the value of the arts and culture. I think our Department of Arts, Sports and Culture has been relegated to really fluffy, you know, strange flags for 2 million or 22 million, all of those kinds of things. Maybe we can talk a little bit about what that link is between arts and culture and heritage. You started talking about the identity of a nation. How does the arts help create that identity?
Right. So in terms of how the arts help, I mean, if let me make an example with the Nigerians first, right? You know, Nigeria, not so long ago, it was the most underrated country, and when you come from Nigeria, you'll be so embarrassed, they will make fun of you and mock you. But because Nigerians took pride on who they are, right? They started with the movies. They were very low budget movies. They're still pushing that low budget movie, but that changed the whole narrative of how we think about the Nigerians. Their music, now people started to want to sound like Nigerians, you know, even when they talk in their songs. Some do it could be xenophobic, but when they go to the music, they want to sound like Nigerians because that's so cool. And we all idolize that. And if you look at Nigerians, they influence globally. They don't just influence maybe in South Africa or globally. Americans, they feel when they are working with Nigerians artists, they are working with the authentic people, you know. So the culture of being patriotic and the culture of understanding who you are, it's very important, right? And you don't have to try and be like someone else, being you know, talking about the stories of where you come from. That's very important. I can't be talking about the champagnes and the Bucattis and all these things, yet I come from the four shack room, you know, and we share one tap, there's a squatter camp and all. There's a lot of stories that need to be told the way they are from the point of South Africans. So we should not, you know, and that's some history or some situations, well, they are not ideal, but the fact is it's where we are. And if we don't talk about those issues, you know, we might not get rescued by, you know, relevant people. We will think that, okay, in South Africa, everything is cool because everyone is wearing necklaces, they're pumping champagnes. And
that is the image that's come up, right? The image that we started to create in the post-apartheid South Africa of having made it. People who haven't made it will project the image of having made it, and then we create a false perception that things are better than they actually are.
And Tess, maybe just adding to what Mr. Phiri is saying here, the department on its own is super bloated. And in its bloatedness, it does not cater for everyone. I think we need to start having a conversation as artists to say we need a department that will focus strictly on us so that we get things right. It is true, artists are in a very better position to be able to create an image and identity of this country. Culturally, if I may put it that way, we all know that we have a lot of different, I don't know, should I call it tribes or different cultures within a country. As a one nation, we have different tribes, right? That we still need to make a plan and work around those. That how do we embrace each other or each one of them without undermining the other,
right?
You know, and right now, on top of that whole confusion, they've added the sports in it. So someone in the three parties will be undermined or less emancipated, or however we can put it, you know. So the department on its own is not helping us to find our way. And artists cannot breathe because most of the time in this country, unfortunately, artists are the ones who are always on the back seat, and they are playing a crucial role.
I mean, you told a story the other day at one of our Rivonia Circle meetings about the role of Kwaito in the country. And I want to get to that because I think it's an important part of it. But just before we do, I wanted to link it to the first thing you started with, which is not limiting the arts to only being about representation, but also being about economic development.
Definitely.
And we, at Rivonia Circle, we say everything is political. The economy is political.
Definitely.
It's probably the bedrock of our politics.
Yeah.
And so you guys have made that link between the arts and as a space for expression and identity, but also a space for economic development of the country.
Definitely.
And so how do you make that a solid link? How do we start talking about the arts as an economic driver, not just something that is about identity politics?
Okay. Someone said the last time, very, very smart guy, Paul, said, art is everything. You are in a workplace, they judge you according to your performance, right? So art is everything. As much as you say politics is everything, art is everything,
right.
And I can tell you right now that the art sector is the only sector, if things go accordingly or on a more clearer page, if we put it, arts is the only sector that we can say they own their economy.
Right.
Economy of this country, I'm going to put it the way it is. I think we're still fighting for an economy that is not ours. There's people that are holding on to the economy, and we're still fighting for those crumbs.
Right.
But with the art sector, they own it. It's their craft. It's their, what do they call this? PI or yes,
the
intellectual.
IP.
Yes,
The IP.
I'm telling you right. So they own it.
Right.
And you can start from building portraits. There's no hotel that does not have a portrait.
Right.
Let's start there. There is no hotel that does not have any, some even have those cultural beads and stuff. That's art. But what we are doing is saying, whatever art that you do, you are crafting, you're doing music, you're doing poetry, whatever that you are doing, do it as an entrepreneur.
Yes.
That's where our power is. And economically, artists are not people that need to be hired, but are people that need to be more business-minded. Hence, we are saying we believe or pushing the narrative that arts are entrepreneurs. Not just workers, but they are on that level. And they have a huge advantage to contribute highly to the economy of this country.
And I think that's an interesting way of thinking about it. I'd never thought about the idea that the arts industry is where you can own the industry. You can own because you are the product.
Yes.
You create the products. It's there's no other industry where you really the person is the entirety of the product. And I think that's a really good idea in this country to think about, because ownership is a big issue.
It is.
Yeah,
Ownership of the economy, ownership of platforms and spaces. But in as much as the artist is the product policy, I think there's also a question around the platforms, because you're right, if we are the product, if I'm now calling myself an artist, we'll see how far that gets me in my life. But if the artist is the product and the owner, what has been the barriers to success?
Okay. You see, there's systems that were created, not just in creative sector only, generally, right? Systems. So there's people that would watch and they realize, oh, okay, Tessa can dance, can sing, and people like that.
I can dance and sing,
yes.
by the way.
Actually, I can make money out of her because she's got a lot of following, right? So I don't empower you, instead I exploit you,
Yeah.
right? Now, that's where the challenge is, you see. Now, we need to start changing that. I think that's why we're advocating for people to have information about them, understanding that they are brands. Now, all these red tapes that made us to talk about what we are talking about, for us to actually push for IKO to be formed, because of the red tapes, because of the biolas, because of the corruption that is up there. You know, I mean, in the industry right now, they try to create a federation, which is CIFSA, that has never worked for us, because there's still corruption, how it was formed and all. It's like now we are getting federations for favors. For when I go to the elections, you are my constituency, and therefore the organization forgets its mandate. Now it's focusing on campaigning for Tessa, because Tessa is giving me a little bit of something at the end of the day. Now I have to always, it doesn't matter whether the millions of artists are starving and all that, it doesn't matter. All this talent that can actually grow 100 times the economy of our country, or it can pay me 100 times more than what the peanuts that I'm receiving. I'm blinded by the carrot that is being dangled in me in front of my eyes, and I keep on running for that carrot, and that's what is destroying us. So to be quite honest, we need people that are sober-minded, people that are passionate, and people that understand. There are those people that are out there that have wisdom and that have knowledge, but those kind of people, most of the time, they don't get platforms because they don't have resources. When I talk about resources, they don't have money, they don't have, you know, a lot of they don't have, when they, even the little platforms that they would get, they would be suppressed in those platforms, because people with money, obviously, they want to hold on to whatever that they are holding on to, and then that's the main thing. So as artists, again, all the creative sector need to come together and start supporting each other genuinely, so that, you know, these red tapes can be squashed. We don't have to be on radio for Mxolisi to become a millionaire. Come to my shows, buy my music. You know, I don't have to be, and let's push that thing. As long as I'm talented, support me. It's even worse now. We can take advantage of the social medias and stuff like that. But, you know, the problem is that we still somehow prisoners. You know, we are like we've been hypnotized to follow a certain pattern or a certain route. That is why you find most of the artists being depressed, even though they have made it. You'll find a lot of artists being depressed, and those, I'm talking like that because I know they come to our offices for counseling, well-known artists and the unknown. There's a lot of mental issues in the creative sector, because people want to express themselves, they just want to become artists, but now they are suppressed by all these red tapes, by all these politics that they don't understand. You know, someone wants to do a particular, but they are told, no, you can't sing that, because maybe there are chances that thing is empowering black people or the South Africans generally, you know. And therefore, you need to change. Talk about naked women that sells. Talk about this.
Right.
Talk about, you know, all that. So it suppresses someone. You end up feeling like you're selling your soul, and automatically you'll be depressed, because you know what you're singing is something that you don't believe in. But because you want to live, you want to survive, and if people are following you, they're taking selfies with you. You know, it's that double standard kind of a thing.
Yeah.
It will automatically, I mean, depress you at the end of the day.
Yeah, we're moving fast into the politics of this conversation, because I think it's a lot of what we're talking about here is who has access to where the resources are. The platforms are about resources. And because we're the most unequal country in the world, very few people have a lot of resources.
A lot.
So instead of working the ground, as it were, to get small money from big audiences, the system and the industry is set up to get small audiences that have big money. And I think we have to start thinking about, how do we create collective bottom-up approaches to this? Because you're right, if we started supporting each other, if we started having kind of more small money coming together rather than this focus on the top, then you don't get told by some executive that knows who's going to buy at Musica or who's going to buy on Spotify. We can start thinking about coming to the show and paying there in Dipkloof or something like that. Which then leads us straight into the question about, what is the role of the arts in transforming our society? Because even just taking a different approach to it could transform our society, can transform our economy. And so I want to pick up on that conversation that we had the other day. I've referenced it today in my article in the Sowetan, by the way. Your name appears in my article in the Sowetan today. The story of Kwaito and the role that you feel Kwaito played in the early days of our democracy. So maybe start there and just talk a little bit about, the real intersection between artists and their artistry and the building of our society.
Okay. If you allow me, Tess, I'm gonna start back before I get to the Kwaito generation. Artists are born activists, and my I don't know how to put it. The way I believe in the arts, I believe artists are more spiritual beings. When you preach or talk to someone, there's a whole lot of misunderstanding in the discussion than when you are listening to a song. You get the message more clearer.
That is true.
Somehow. So spiritual, that is why I'm saying it is too spiritual. Because you can listen to a Nigerian song or a person speaking Swahili, which I wish I knew it, but I don't. But because of the sense of the song, I can be able to tap into that spirit. Right. So now, our country and the artists back before the democracy era were Bontate Blondi Makene, if I can make an example. Abigail Kubeka, they played a huge role as artists. They played a huge role, and I can tell you now that Tate Blondi was singing his bubblegum music, wearing his underpants, the shiny ones and stuff, but because you could sense now that the country is in need of this intervention, they came and jumped on board. And the world somehow got to realize that there is something happening. Even though we are very special kind of people, when we fight, we sing, when we're happy, we sing. So somehow there might be a misinterpretation there. But mainly what I'm trying to say is that the Mzabalazo song played a huge role in the liberation of this country. And that generation on its own has played a much bigger role. John Kani also played a huge role, and I'll come to him after we get to this era of democracy. Democracy was introduced. The electoral system was introduced. But who are you telling? An ordinary citizen did not know at that time, what do you say I must do? Go and put my cross there, and what happens? Tate John Kani and his team came up with the concept of going around the communities and doing theater shows to teach people how to vote.
Oh, wow.
And then they got to understand,
I did not know that.
Yeah, and then they created that box and said, no, you come in here, your vote is your secret. This is what we mean when we say your vote is your secret. And people started doing those.
So guys,
where's
your we need one for 2024.
Note
to self, we need one for 2024.
And because now we have this freedom, everything is confusing. People are starting to, this is one mistake that our government, the leaders back then who, this democracy, I feel like it was imposed on people. And okay, now we are free. And then what does freedom mean? I'm still afraid of a white guy. My gogo still works kitchen, and you still do the best thing, but we are saying we are free. And the Kwaito generation came and said, hey, you suppressed us for a very long time. 4 o'clock, there was state of emergency. People needed to go back into their houses. Right. No gatherings, no nothing. And the Kwaito generation said, no, now is our time.
Now we are free.
And for us to show and express what freedom is, we're introducing the street bashes. And they started to grow, the street bashes. And we didn't, they didn't even need to book venues for whatever. Just got a tent, put a stage there, close the street, ziao. That's how it was done. But it was not done in a way that we are celebrating, we are reckless, but we are saying we are demonstrating our power. The power that they say we are having, this is our demonstration.
The power to act.
The power to act. And the song started coming out. And I always applaud Atama Fokate for this song, People were afraid to even confront the issue. But he came out and said, don't call me kafir. And it was a bold move.
Yes.
And the identity started to be created at the time to say, hey, well, this is who we are now. And the Kwaito generation really played a huge role in that.
Yeah, and Kwaito generation, now, when you talk about Kwaito, now you're talking about us. That's who we are. but just to go back a bit to fill in some of the things that Esther was talking about even before the Kwaito came in. You know, we have legends, Bomamire Makeva, Jonas Gwangwa, Yuri Phiris, Kefa Semenya, Letambul. Those people played a huge role when it came to the political world or the industry or, you know, politics generally. I mean, they used their music to fundraise for liberation. The activists or the politicians then were funded by the monies that were fundraised by the legends, by the artists. They fundraise for them controversies to have weapons and all that. And those are the things that have been suppressed. The information that is not coming through. And because once you get that kind of information, you start to look at things different in terms of why am I an artist? What is it that I'm contributing with my artist, you know, and for me to contribute with pumping champagne all the time. What is it? Because those artists understood who they were. They understood exactly what the power that they had through their art. They did not have to become Mandelas. They were themselves, but they understood the power to act with what they had. Just like she spoke about John Khan in terms of acting, they did it with the music. So other people did it with being photographers, some did it with art itself and all. So you can name all these legends. That is why today, most of them, they are part of history. And some of us don't really understand why there's a Miriam Makeba street. And we think, why didn't they just choose anyone? You know, it's because she played a crucial and a very important role at that time. And fast tracking and going to the Kwaito generations, those guys at that time, remember, Esther highlighted something that as South Africans, we lived in tribes, right? So there's Indians, there's, you know, Zulus, Padis, and whatsoever. But you think about Kwaito, that's genre that did not belong to any. It belonged to everyone.
That is true.
It united South African.
It was that mixture.
It was that mixture. So you can't claim it and say, hey, this is for Afrikaners or for Zulus. No, it's for everyone. Meaning it cut across all races and or languages, which is what social cohesion, right? It played a very important role when it comes to the social cohesion. And while the politicians were undermining it, as much as they are undermining it today, they played a huge role. They started giving artists independence. Those are the people that started independence and said, we're going to do our thing independently, we're going to push this thing. Because remember, Kwaito was not really accepted then, but they broke the barriers to the point where the master started to say, hey, if you can't beat them, join them. Right?
And we thank Lindelani Mkhize for that.
We thank Lindelani, we thank Oscar as well. The Kalawa Jazz guys, you know, they've done well till today. How many millionaires have come out of Kalawa Jazz?
Definitely.
You know?
So Esther, should artists get involved in politics?
We can't separate the two. Arts is politics. I'm stealing your words now. Yeah. Arts is politics. We can't separate it. And unfortunately, right now, most of the arts that is political active, it's the arts that we do not need as a country currently. There is a whole lot of things that are happening, which I'm not comfortable in getting to it right now. But artists need to be rechanneled. And why I'm saying using the word rechanneled is because we come from a very tough time as the creative sector. COVID, I think, hit us hard more than anyone else. And our artists need the restoration. They need us to go out back to them and revive them. A lot of albums, yes, were created during COVID. A lot of people released songs out of COVID. But it was not the kind of activism that we wish could have created under the state of disaster that we were in, and under a state where most of our rights were suppressed because, I mean, COVID regulations were not fair to everyone, you know, and I wish we could have had more activism. I wish we could have been more politically driven and provoked as artists to come up with some way to lead our country to where we needed to go. But yes, right now, the involvement must be there. It's a matter of going and reigniting that fire because the fire is in there. And sometimes I feel that maybe our government is neglecting them so much that they get more to a state of depression so that they don't have time to see and diagnose the issues that are happening in our country and sing about them. So now they are more focused on themselves personal. Do I have money for bread? What do I need to do to fundraise? That is why we're seeing a whole lot of videos coming out on social media, artists asking for donations. It can't be that way. How do you then go back to that person and say, look, you need the power to act and whatnot? So we need to first diagnose why is the government doing what it is doing to our artists. What is the suppression all about? And after we have dealt with that, give artists a new mandate or a new assignment. And we have a new assignment. 2024 is our new assignment. So everybody must step up and let's reshape this country and definitely move and brand South Africa 2.0.
Mxolisi, some people would say, it's all good and well for artists to play the role of telling the stories, be the Miri Makeba that tells the story, sing the story, be there. Should they get inside the ring in terms of political contestation? Should they be wanting to be the lawmaker? Should they want to be the policymaker? Is there room for artists not only to tell the story of the country and mobilize people's consciousness, but to be in the ring?
Of course, yes, indeed. 100%, there is a space and there should be a space. I'll make an example. Artists are teachers, are advocates at the same time. So why leave them outside of that space? Because they are the ones that are being creative on how to tell or advocate for whatever issue that is out there. So leaving them out, they are already politicking or talking politics through their art in whatever way. So, I mean, we can't say we should not even be thinking about it. In fact, we should be just championing that. And can you just imagine if I'll make an example, maybe we take Lindelani Mkhize, for an example, someone that has opened the doors for a whole lot of people to feed their families, to become brands that they are today, I mean, you look at people like guys from Galawa, the work that they have done till today. If those guys were in a better position, they'll be thinking even more broader how to empower the community at large, not only artistically but at large. Because remember, with creative sector, you have people also that are working behind the scenes. You have technicians, you have makeup artists, so art is everything, like you guys were saying. So once you empower that space and artists themselves are empowered to express themselves rightfully and take a certain part in contributing in politics, in economy, fairly, so we stand a better chance for us to grow as a country. Hence, that is why I was making an example with Nigerians. I mean, you look at Indians, that's what they are doing as well. They invested so much in their entertainment space. You look at even UK, they are not very much of a talented country, but they've really invested. They've really invested in to a point where they tell us what they want us to hear and how Americans, then you can't touch them. I mean, a typical example, you can't watch any American movie and not see an American flag. A very powerful, whether it's a low budget thing or it's a high budget thing, American flag, it's always there because they are patriotic and they understand the power of art, how to influence, how to empower, how to live an American dream. Whether that American dream is real or not, but you, as an American, you are sold that thing, you are living for Americans. If I have to go to war and die for my country, you would do that. If the war was to come here today, who's going to stand up and say, I'm fighting for my country, honestly speaking?
No, you fair point. Fair point. Yes. But I mean, people might say, having artists, enter into politics it isn't their domain. If you look at people's responses to like a Bobby Wine, for instance, in Uganda, people saying, that's not a real contender to a politician. And for me, the answer to that has increasingly become, we need everybody in society willing to go into politics. I mean, one of the conversations at Rhodonia Circle we're really trying to drive is the question about breaking what it means to be a politician. Yeah. And stopping this idea that there's politicians and there's everybody else. Politicians are people who go into politics. Yeah. And that there must be some sort of cultural revolution that says, an accountant can go into politics.
Yeah.
And a lawyer can go into
A
politics.
domestic worker.
And that we need a domestic worker can go into politics because we need different people around the policy making table, different people around the legislative table to make different kinds of contributions. And so, to your mind, what contributions do you think artists could make, particularly to being in parliament and making laws, or to being in the executive and making policy? What do you think is missing in those spaces that if artists were to raise their hands to contest, they could contribute?
Okay. Wow, that's very interesting. I think, I'll go back to Ntate John Kani's lecture. He did mention that he and the team that he was with at that time, after 94, advocated for the Department of Arts and Culture to exist in this country.
Right.
There's things that an ordinary person does not have an eye for than an artist. That's why if you look at how clothing was created, there's a specific eye for that thing in terms of maybe fashion designer. So the eye is not just only to make us look good, to make us wear beautiful garments and whatever, but we need an overall eye of an artist to help us reimagine the South Africa we want and create what we need and help us execute it. The problem we have now with our government, Tessa, maybe you'll advise better. I'll be talking like just a person who does not have any clue. I don't know if the current politicians are the ones who are responsible for the policies that we have in our country. I don't know how that works. I don't know why are we struggling to execute most of these policies. For me, when I'm looking at it on that angle alone, I'm just seeing that we are lacking some sort of coordination. And I can also say this coordination is there if it needs to be there. And compared every policy or every program that government has ever put on the table to say, South Africa, this is where we are heading, and we're still not going anywhere. And look at just the 2 years we had of COVID, how coordinated it was. You understand?
Yeah.
So artists have a way to be able to help execute and implement things. That is why we can bring an open field and it can be turned into something that you never thought it would, because
100%.
artists are involved.
100%.
And we are lacking that kind of a thing. And there's more as well. But I think that their contribution will help us go further in this country.
I mean, I'd never thought about that, but you're right. Artists create, they
Artists
make,
create,
they
yes.
move.
Exactly.
There's not an element of you just procrastinating and stagnating and being okay with it.
Yeah.
Artists are creating, and we're not being creative enough in our society. We talk about a society that needs to respond to our challenges. We're not agile enough to respond to those challenges.
Yeah.
We talk about innovation. Where's the innovation going to come from if there's nobody in the room who has that eye? I think, I think that makes sense. But I think also maybe before we start to wrap up, Mxolisi, just to talk about some of the policy issues that the sector itself has to deal with. So I was speaking to Jack Devnarain from Salga recently, and he was talking about two major policy issues that at Salga they're talking about. One is the intellectual property and rights issue and royalties and all of that, and saying that, we need a better regime around that, and particularly when it comes to contracts and people not being able to secure their labor rights. But the second one that he mentioned was the idea of artists not being able to be seen as a real industry. And so this very, very deregularized space means that, for instance, the Competition Commission has come after Salga, saying that if artists come together and they start to actually determine pricing structures, that they're now anti-competitive. And they're not allowed to do that in law. Those are policy issues I'd never thought about in my life. And so I was wondering, are there other policy issues that we need to be thinking about in the space of arts and culture that need to be on the table for 2024?
There's a lot of policies. The thing is, policies, for me, personally, policies are are things that are just written. What is most important is to be practical about whatever that has been written. So even if maybe you would go to the website of Arts and Culture, probably you'll find beautiful policies there. But does the minister or the people running understand arts itself?
Yeah.
Do they? Or are they just administrators? Because that's another issue. You see, you can't take someone who has never swept, someone who has never washed dishes, someone who has never, someone who's just used to wake up and their bed is done and everything, and then you throw them to take care of the hotel. I mean, to clean after the hotel guest and all that. That's going to be a mess. That's not where your strong point is, and that's not how you were groomed. So with policies, I think policies should start from schools, for me. I think policy should be introduced from the school level. And when I talk about the school level, I'm talking about we need to understand each and every department of the parliament. What does COPA do? What does what do so that if I decide to become an artist, I know all my rights, I know what needs to be done. The problem, like I'm saying, we can all, I mean, there's a freedom charter, and then someone can create another charter, there's policies, there's this, there's that. The implementation part of it, that's the most important thing. So if we have people with a vision, they would understand that, okay, we've been having this problem for a quite long time. Well, how do we deal with it? How do we make sure that we regulate certain things? The things that worked for us in apartheid era, for an example, the skills development part of it. Right, a lot of us went to schools, and every Wednesdays we would go to a technical school where you would choose a certain subject, whether you become a woodworker or a carpenter, or you do boiler making and all these kind of things, which empowers you. It was part of the policy of them then, because they understood that not everyone could be an intellectual. Anyway, we want them to be laborers in some of the things, but it worked for them and it worked for the country because people were empowered to use their own hands, right? This is the same method that they are using in Mozambique and other countries. They come to South Africa, they are using their hands. They don't have to be academically smart, but them using their hands, if you look into it, it's arts. Creating a shoe, doing designers and all that, and we hire them, probably the people that have put up these things, people from outside, and look at how beautiful the studio is, but it's artistic if you look at it, you see. So it is important for us to say, okay, these are the policies that are there, but more importantly, how do we implement them? You look at an artist like Akon, for an example, or Wycliffe Jean, who's been fighting to become a president at his own country. You know, it tells you how deep artists are. Look at what the guy from Senegal, who Akon, has done. That country was dark. That country did not have electricity, but he managed to fundraise billions to light up his country. Today, 80% of that country it has electricity because of one artist. An artist, not a politician, but he understands that I've got a power and I can use my power to become a politician and change this policy of living in a dark place. That's his policy, right? He's practical about it. So all in all, we just need to be practical about the policies. For me, I think that's the most important part, because we can talk about policies day in and day out, but if we're not practical about it, it's not going to assist us.
Yeah, I want to wrap up, and I want us to end with a bit of a call to action. So Esther, you made a statement earlier that said, 2024 is our big mission. Yeah. It's the thing that lies ahead of us. What's the call to action to the country generally, but to artists in particular, around what do they do? What do we do in the run-up to 2024? I mean, there's Mtata Frank Shikane a few months ago was I think my first guest on the platform. Okay. And he made the point saying that we need a people's manifesto towards 2024. Before the politicians start to activate their campaigns and tell us about their manifestos and whatever, we must have our own manifesto. We must be thinking about 2024 as active participants. What's your call to action for artists, but also for society in terms of 2024?
Okay, for artists, I think we personally as IKO have not done much of the visiting and having discussion with artists. I think they were just longing to be on the stages and just perform, because when there's a lot inside, you need to find platforms to take that out. But my call for action is that let's go back to the same mentality or the same spirit before 1994 and do the same for us for 2024. As artists, we have played a huge role, and we have over-explained this throughout this discussion. And I believe that artists need to be in a point where their current status quo provokes them enough to step up and say, this is the South Africa we want. Yes, we were all fooled. We did not know how sugar-coated and how big of a coat the sugar is in this democracy. So, fine, we all accepting, myself included, that, yeah, no.
We were sold the dream.
Yes, but now we have the power with the resources that are around us to be able to redesign the South Africa we want. And for the country to know that there is no way that we can operate without the arts existing. I will tell you just a small thing before we close. In the creative sector, it is difficult for us to say, okay, you are poets, this is where you fall under. When you are a musician, you fall here. An actor, it is difficult. You know why? We can't regulate that part. It is because as Africans in general, we are creatives. You can't say, Tessa, you are not an artist, you can't sing. But Tessa can dance, you know? And I always say, even when you listen to the songs of an African, there's always this beat. There's always this drum. And you are in church, you are in what? Whenever there's this drum, some spiritual things are happening. There's this spiritual provocation, or you're thinking about your Jesus or whatever, but it is the nature of an African that we are creatives. How do we separate ourselves and say, I'm not a creative, I'm a politician? Who's guiding you? Which spirit is guiding you? You know? So I'm just calling there to say, let's be provoked enough to say, yes, we've been there, we've done it, but for us, for the sake of the coming generations, we need to step up and redesign the South Africa we want for 2024. And I'm sure that we are all agreeing that anybody can stand and become a candidate. So if we can have a president who's an artist or a minister, then hey, we can't wait. No, I really can't.
We need them. Mxolisi, your call to action, 2024. What must artists do? What must we all do?
I mean, I would say, let us be real. Let's start there. Because once we are real, then we will realize that we are being sold a dream, one way or the other. Because realizing that I really come from a shack, I mean, there's no way where I can try to pretend to be rich and all that. And that automatically pushes me to want to drive a new democracy or a better change. So I become active as an artist, right? Because sometimes people, they hear the word politician and they automatically become bored, they get bored. They think being a politician is it's talking like being in a parliament, or no, maybe we should change the word politicians. Let's say, let us be participant, let us be activists, you know, let us be patriotic about our own country. Let us be who we are, genuinely so. So instead of me, for an example, going outside and buying an international artist album, let me start by supporting my own brothers first. You know, if 90% of or 100% of my support goes to my own, I'm contributing to my own country. I'm creating jobs in my own country. I'm buying the labels, the music. I'm supporting my own movies, our own movies. We are creating jobs. We are killing the poverty, the crime, and the segregation. Because remember, the more we are poor, is the more we're going to be segregated and all that. So once we killed all those things by supporting each other, that way, you know, it's a call for action. But for that call to happen, let's stop pretending to be other people that we are not. Be authentic, be who you are. That way you will realize the power that you have and the drive and the change that you can bring into this country. More importantly, let's not we don't have time to relax and say, no, someone else will do it for us. Someone else will advocate on my behalf because, you know, they chill with Tessa. Yeah, and Tessa, I understand, they'll speak for us. I don't know exactly what is burning in you. Probably you are our new Jesus or new Mandela. I don't know. You know, just come out of that shell. Speak your mind, speak your voice. There's so many ways to speak. You look at them in the social media, it's a beautiful thing. African people can dance, which is a beautiful. But also, if we can use these platforms to push a certain narrative, a certain message. That will be great. That will be, rather than for every time we're just looking at the people dancing for just to trend and drinking just for fun, you know, trending for all kind of wrong reasons, if I may put it that way. Or for no particular empowerment reasoning, you know, let's start using those social medias as well to push the right narrative, or to tell our own stories and how we want to see this South Africa that Esther has spoken about, which is South Africa 2.0. You know, we believe in that it's 2.0. It needs to come. We need a whole lot of a new South Africa that is owned by everyone, particularly young people, because they are the future, one way or the other. And you see how I mean, when you talk to young people and you talk about politics, it's like you're talking to, I don't know, you're going to there's people, religion and the traditionals. So it's a total opposite. And politics it's not boring. Politics is an everyday thing. We are living in load shedding is politics. You go out today, you get marked as politics. Your mom did not buy bread is politics.
Yeah.
Everything is politics. So let us be involved to change the status quo, because we can't run away from it anyway. Especially as artists.
This has been one of my favorite conversations we've had on this platform thus far. Thank you so much for sharing your experience, your wisdom, but mostly your hope. We've come to the end of this session, but as my t-shirt says, we are the ones we've been waiting for. That's what this conversation felt like for me. It reminded me that we are certainly the ones that we've been waiting for, and that means all of us. Everybody has a role to play in the creating of a better country, in the creating of a better future. And as Mxolisi said, if we're going to sit around waiting for somebody else to come, we may wait forever. We don't have time to wait. And so we must all challenge ourselves to get up and go. Challenge ourselves, whether we are artists, lawyers, doctors, whatever we are. I hope everybody has taken from this conversation that we all can do something. We are the ones we've been waiting for. Until the next time on Full Circle with Tessa Dooms, please have a great time and make sure you go out there and change South Africa.
Thank you.
Thank you.